Hello and happy Halloween. It is the last day of the month, October 2023, which means it's time for another monthly recap. I was going to wear a costume, but I figured every day is a costume when you have facial hair like an old-timey bank robber. So, alas, I just wore my most Halloween-y dress shirt. So it was a crazy busy month, absolutely ridiculously crazy. And I looked back at what happened with my monthly recap a month ago and what's transpired, and it's like, everything is different, but also somehow the same. It's kind of weird. We're going to really kind of roll up our sleeves a little bit, get into the numbers, because there's a lot of headline numbers that looked really, really positive. But as you kind of dissected them, there might actually be some signs of weakness showing up. So we're kind of getting into all that. So October, we avoided the shutdown. Woohoo! But there's another one looming. Boo! So we're going to be talking about that. Jobs figures and inflation are both really resilient. We're going to talk about the ins and outs of that. The U.S. economy is humming along, but the same can't be said for Europe. There's been some issues. Germany showed zero, possibly slightly negative GDP. France as well. So there's possibly recession starting to pop up in Europe. Is that going to kind of bleed over into the U.S.? Talk about that a little bit. And then mortgage rates really took it on the chin. It was a rough month for interest rates. Rates went from around 7.375 to 7.8%. That was for like a 30-year fix, 5% down, good credit score, single family residence. But rates really kind of took it on the chin. There's some reason to think that rates might be kind of hitting their highs and should hopefully be rebounding. Fingers crossed. But there's a lot of unknowns, starting with the government shutdown. The government shutdown. When I did this recording a month ago, it was, hey, look, this weekend it's possible the government's going to shut down. Well, Kevin McCarthy reached across the aisle and they did a temporary funding bill to fund the government for another 45 days. Yay! However, it ended up costing him his speakership role. he quickly got ousted. If you recall, to get nominated, he had to go back and forth many, many times, talking to different groups of people, trying to get enough votes to become the speaker to begin with. One of the big things he gave up was any single member in the House of Representatives could bring a vote to the House to oust the speaker. He basically lost all leverage, all control that he possibly could have had to get nominated in the first place. Well, the Freedom Caucus saw, hey, you reached across the aisle. We do not like the fact that you passed this temporary spending bill, and they ousted him. And what transpired after that was 3.5 weeks. I doubt that they even thought that it was going to take that long, but 3.5 weeks of trying to find a replacement. First, it was Steve Scalise who got the nomination, and then it was Jim Jordan's who really dug in his heels, really wanted to become the speaker, went back and forth numerous times, found out he was not going to have enough support. He then passed it to Tom Emmer, who did not have enough support, and then finally, also, in addition to 11 other people, 11 other people had kind of put their name forward, and they didn't garner enough support to even become the official nominee. But eventually, Mike Johnson won the role. Now, Mike Johnson, not getting into my personal political beliefs, I try really hard to kind of steer clear of all that, but there's no getting around Mike Johnson is very conservative leaning. And the concern is that, okay, great, Mike Johnson saw what happened to Kevin McCarthy and what happened when he passed a spending bill. So is it entirely possible that he digs in his heels, goes really strong, leans really hard into making sure that their party gets what they want in this? And is it possible that it leads to another shutdown? It's entirely possible, if not even likely. In fact, I would say that 2 weeks in advance of this, what we're talking right now, it's probably more likely that we're going to have a shutdown this time than it was even last time. And last time got really, really close, if you recall. So we shall see. But yeah, it took 3.5 weeks to finally get a new speaker in the House of Representatives. And that speaker tends to be a little bit more conservative. So there's going to be a big showdown on the horizon. So we shall see. Jobs figures, those came out extremely strong. Crazy strong, ridiculously strong, kind of questionably strong. And we're going to get into the numbers a little bit here. So there's the JOLTS report, which is the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey. So the JOLTS report is trying to attempt to figure out how many job opening signs there are, how many help wanted signs there are in the country. That had been decreasing fairly significantly and fairly statically for quite some time. But in August, it increased. The role changed. It switched, and it went from 8.92 million job openings to 9.61. There's some questions going on with JOLTS about, are they double counting some jobs? For instance, like today's economy, there's a lot of remote positions. Are they posting the same job in Iowa and Colorado and New York State for one job instead of three? There's some questions going on with regards to that. But even despite that, job openings increased. So kind of perplexing there a little bit. And then we get the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS jobs report, which is the federal government's jobs report. And it showed 336,000 jobs were created in September. Expectations were only for 170,000. So it almost doubled expectations, which is mind-boggling because all you hear about in the news is, such and such employer is laying people off, such and such employer is cutting jobs. In addition, if that wasn't strong enough, and that was strong enough, if that wasn't strong enough, there's 119,000 upward revisions to the prior two reports. So a really strong report became even stronger at the end of the day. Now, this is where, and this is kind of the recurring theme of this monthly recap, is you see the headline numbers, and then you have to look a little bit closer at some of the finer points. Here's a couple cracks that might have showed up. 151,000 job gains were part-time workers. That could very well be two-parent households, one parent might not be working, maybe they go back to finding part-time work. Anecdotally, I know a few people that has happened. The cost of goods, credit card debt, mortgage payments, all that stuff has really kind of been increasing. So people may go get additional jobs that they didn't have prior. Multiple job holders increased 123,000 of those 336,000 job gains. So that's a huge chunk of them. People going and getting a second job. So what we're finding, humans are very resilient. We are more likely to change our work schedules than our consumer spending habits. And that's a big takeaway you're going to find as well. Now, the other side of that, we are still spending money. And that has leading to inflation being rather stubborn. The government, if you recall, they've been trying to cause pain. They've been trying to hike rates to make it so that you're incentivized to save money. You're decentivized to spend that money. Do not spend your money. Your credit card rates are really high. Do not spend your money. Stop spending money. And if you stop spending money, due to supply and demand, it's going to start to cause the cost of goods to start to decrease. Inflation is being very stubborn, despite the Fed's best efforts. So there's three different inflation metrics. Producer price index, that's inflation as companies feel. It's a wholesale inflation. What they pay for raw goods, they then repackage those goods, put their twist on them and then resell them to consumers. It tends to be a leading indicator. As businesses get charged more for goods, they tend to pass that extra fee on to consumers. So it can be a leading indicator. Now they could just, shrink their profit margins and eat some of that extra cost, but they tend to pass it off to consumers over time. That increased 0.5% September. Year over year, it increased from 2% to 2.2%. Now the core rate, that is if you remove volatile food and energy components. Gasoline prices can be extremely volatile week to week, right? So if you remove that, or hey, bird flu broke out, eggs are really expensive now, chicken's really expensive now. Okay, great, let's remove the food and energy pieces, which tend to be really volatile. Let's focus on everything else, which is a little bit more stable. The Fed prefers to look at core rates, but that increased from 2.5 to 2.7%. Now the consumer price index, that's inflation as you and I, us consumers feel it, increased 0.4% September. Year over year, it remained steady at 3.7%. The core rate decreased slightly from 4.3 to 4.1%. Personal consumption expenditures, that's the Fed's favorite measure of inflation. So whenever they reference inflation figures, they tend to reference personal consumption expenditures. That's their favorite measure. That increased also up 0.4% September. Year over year, it decreased slightly from 3.5% down to 3.4%. So mild improvement there. The core rate decreased from 3.9 to 3.7%. The Fed wants the core PCE to be 2%. Now, 2%, that number is really flawed. It was decided back in the 90s behind closed doors with the Fed. They said, hey, look, we have to come up with some kind of target for this, but we do not want this target to get out because we know that if it gets out into the market, it's going to go from kind of a guiding principle, hey, 2% inflation to now it's policy. Policy is 2% inflation. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happened. The Fed has actually doubled down on that and said, yeah, no, we still want that 2% inflation target. They don't care if it's antiquated. They don't care if it's from the 90s. They simply do not care. So that's what they're going for. Inflation is still higher than what they want, almost double what they want it to be. And there's some headwinds with regards to inflation as well. So that's kind of a sticking point. But people keep spending money. And you're going to see a graph that shows that very clearly here in a little bit. Now, on the flip side, and kind of in the same line as well, but retail spending. Retail sales rose 0.7% in September, expectations for 0.3%. So again, really good, strong headline numbers, double what the markets were expecting, double retail sales. Now, when you start to look closer at the numbers, you see a shift happening from discretionary spending, such as electronics, furniture, sporting goods, towards more necessities, which is, food, transportation. So we're noticing a shift in what people are spending money on. They're still spending money very, very quickly, actually, but they're spending money more on those necessities versus those discretionary goods. So again, you have to look a little bit beyond the headline and focus on some of that minutia. That being said, the GDP rose in the third quarter to 4.9 annualized pace, which beat expectations of 4.3%, which is already kind of really high expectations. Also was up significantly from the second quarter, which was 2.1%. Now, again, I mentioned at the very beginning, Germany, France, some of the biggest economies in Europe, they've shown negative GDP for the third quarter. So they're starting to show signs that they might be entering a recession. If they enter a recession, are they going to be then less likely to spend their money on our goods? It could certainly start to drag us down a little bit. But consumers are still spending money rather quickly. And that brings me to my favorite slide of the day, which is a couple graphs from the St. Louis Fed. Okay, so personal savings dropped to 3.4%. That's important. First of all, during the Great Recession, we're nowhere near that, but for a lot of reasons, which I can get into if you want to know about it. But the Great Recession, that personal savings rate was in the mid twos. So we are entering, very close to the lowest levels of personal savings. What happened was when the pandemic hit, everybody just started hoarding money. If you recall, first of all, there was nothing to do with it. You couldn't travel. You couldn't go to the movies. You couldn't go to sporting events or concerts. There was no money need to be spent. You didn't have to buy back to school clothes because the kids are all sheltering in place, right? So there was and not only that, but we were also just hoarding cash because we were so uncertain about what was going to happen, right? I remember working in the branch when the pandemic hit domestically, and every person that walked through the doors was withdrawing cash because we were just so uncertain of what was going to happen. So we just started hoarding our cash, stocking away those nuts for the winter that we were entering. And then you didn't have anything to spend your money on anyways, even if you wanted to. Well, then masks started coming off, and what happened? We started making up for lost time. All that cash that we had saved, all those nuts that we had stored for the winter, we just started to go into town, and we started to spend that cash like crazy. And you could argue that we maybe created some bad spending habits during that time because it was like, you only live once, time to get the hell out of town. And everybody was doing that exact same thing. Well, with revolving debt, the exact opposite thing happened, right? As we were saving money, we started to spend less money on our credit cards, right? It makes a lot of sense. But again, those bad spending habits have kind of stuck around. Not only that, but it starts to cause a little bit of a snowball effect because credit card rates have increased significantly, oftentimes hitting almost 20% right now. So credit card debt has skyrocketed, and this is all your revolving credit card debt down here. So it has skyrocketed. So what have humans done? Well, there's signs that say, well, we've still been spending money, but we've been spending on credit cards. Not only that, but we've been going and we've been getting second jobs. People who weren't working before are now going and getting part-time jobs, all to kind of support our higher interest rate debt that we have. Now, there's a problem with that, right? You can only work so many hours, right? Maybe that part-time job becomes a full-time job. There's probably more room to be given there, right? But you can only work so many hours in a day, in a week, in a year, right? Not only that, but your credit card has a limit on it. And if you tried to increase your limit on your credit card recently, it's not very easy. They look at your debt to income ratio, they look at how much you're making, and like, those numbers maybe don't make as much sense. Not only that, but financial institutions, they've seen other financial institutions fail. And they're like, we want to retain some more of our cash. We don't want to be kind of, as exposed to certain risky spending habits as we might otherwise have more appetite for. So Financial institutions' approach has changed a little bit. Consumer spending has pretty much stayed intact, but it's because humans are resilient. We see the increased cost of goods, and we're like, no, I'm not going to, start missing mortgage payments, which is still at an incredibly low delinquency rate. I'm just going to go get another job or work more hours or have my spouse go back to work, whatever the case may be. Credit cards have limits. You can only work so many hours. So these are possible cracks in the foundation. Now, time and time again, we've seen that humans can be resilient for a long period of time. And it's entirely possible that we can survive this way for longer than you would imagine. But the Fed has wanted to create pain. The Fed has wanted to create pain. And these could be some of those first cracks of them causing that pain. Next month, November, is going to be just a wild, wild month. Again, second verse, same as the first. I mentioned everything's changed, but everything's still somehow the same. We now have another looming government shutdown. And if you recall, I talked about it last month as well, but what would immediately happen? 1.3 million active duty troops who might have to work and not get paid to do so. 2.2 million federal employees might start to miss checks. IRS is going to probably be slow to process tax returns, less of an issue now, more of an issue during tax season. The TSA, expect longer security lines. If you recall the last government shutdown, the airport security lines were just insanely long. National parks, museums, and zoos. Not every zoo and museum and park will be closed, but the national parks, zoos, and museums could very well be shut down. The reporting of information, all these inflation figures, all those jobs numbers, all that stuff could be delayed as well. And again, the government shutdown is currently on the horizon, potentially. So November 17th is the day. Circle it on your calendar. You're going to hear a lot about this in the lead up to it. Other than that, it's an incredibly busy month. The Fed has come out and said, hey, look, we're anticipating one more rate hike in 2023. Well, they finish up their next meeting literally tomorrow, 11/1. Currently, expectations are for no rate hike. So if they don't hike rates then, do they change how many rate hikes they're anticipating before the end of the year? Or are they still going to hold true to that one rate hike? In which case, okay, great. It sounds like we're going to have another rate hike potentially in December. So something to keep an eye out for. It's also jobs week this week. We're going to continue to see those headline numbers. They may continue to be strong, but now we're going to have to really pick it apart and find out how many were second jobs, how many people were going and getting part-time work that they weren't working before. So a lot on the horizon, crazy busy month ahead of us. Thank you all so much. I hope it's helpful as usual. Thank you all so much for the referrals. As always, it keeps us busy. It is the lifeblood of our business. Your referrals mean the world to me and my team. So thank you all so much. Hope it's helpful. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. I love this stuff. I'm a money nerd, and I really enjoy the education part of it all. So if you have questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to help however I can. So thank you all so much. Happy Halloween again, and enjoy. Bye.